Welcome to the League of Women Voters District 7 Democratic Congressional Primary Virtual Forum. I'm Cynthia White, Chapter Chair of the Bay Village Chapter of the Greater Cleveland League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters was founded 104 years ago by the women who had finally won the right for women to vote in 1920, after a 200-year struggle. It's been nonpartisan since its founding, neither supporting nor opposing any candidate, but remaining focused on issues and processes that promote a healthy democracy. I'd like to thank the audience for attending today, taking the time to become informed voters, one of our most important responsibilities as citizens in a democracy. I'd also like to thank the candidates for setting aside this time to let the voters get to know you. Our forum moderator tonight is Catherine LaCroix, past president of the Greater Cleveland League. She will review the rules of a League Forum event and describe how you can ask your questions of our candidates. Catherine, let's get started.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Before we begin tonight's forum, let's review the format. League rules require candidates to appear in person. No stand-ins are allowed. Also, we cannot hold a forum unless at least two candidates are present. So we're very grateful to our two candidates, Doug Bugie and Matthew Diemer, for being here tonight. And we look forward to hearing their views on issues of importance to our audience, the voters. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. I will then pose questions offered by the audience, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. I'll alternate between the candidates in terms of who goes first for each question. After our Q&A period, our candidates will have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and then we plan to complete this forum promptly, no later than 8 p.m. We have an electronic timer, so our candidates will be aware of the time, and I'm sure all of us also have our ubiquitous cell phones next to our laptops to remind us also. For our audience, if you have a question for the candidates, look at the bottom of your screen, enter it in the Q&A option on your screen. Our volunteers will review questions and pass them on to me. We want to make sure we cover a range of topics without duplication in a logical order if possible. Our volunteers also will make sure that all questions are appropriate. If your question is for only one of the two candidates, let us know. Our default is that both candidates may answer a question. And so now we will turn to our opening statements, which, as I mentioned, will be 2 minutes long. And I would like to invite Mr. Bugie to begin with his 2-minute statement.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate this. It's an honor and privilege, and particularly important to me because I grew up in Bay about 40 years. Family was there since 55, grade school through high school. And I'm dating myself a little bit. When I went to St. Raphael's, I did the Mass in Latin, so that'll date me immediately. My spark to get into this was at Bay. I had a athletic injury and I wanted to be a great basketball player, and that kind of cut my career short. And I started to do more studying and public speaking, and my speech teacher helped me work on that. And I spoke for the right of 18-year-olds to get the right to vote back during the Vietnam period. If you're old enough to die, you're old enough to vote. And that lit the spark for me. I actually won a scholarship to Bowling Green doing that. And I stayed with it. I ran for president Bowling Green. I won with a really diversified ticket. And I got into business, mostly recruitment, domestically and internationally with a Cleveland company. And I left and invested my life savings in 1992 to run for Congress as a Democrat of the West Side. That was back during the Hagan and Okar era. I didn't win, and I went off to Europe. I was invited to join a fella, and we started a recruitment business together. And I was there about 10 years, and we got into 30 countries, filled about 100,000 jobs, and we ended up selling it to a public company. And I moved back to America. Thought I was going to retire in my early 50s and decided against it. But I also found myself a little bit disenchanted with the Democratic Party then, and I joined the Republicans, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I have come off the sidelines because of what's going on in America. I'm here to give the centrists somewhere to go, both Democrat and the rest of the population, the electorate. And I'm looking forward to this conversation with you tonight about that. And I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for that statement. Mr. Diemer, you're on.
How's everybody doing? Thanks to the league for putting this on. You guys always do amazing work. This is my multiple forums from the league, and you get always very well organized. Thanks everybody for being here. My name is Matt Diemer, and I was the Democratic Congressional candidate for 2022, where we were up against Max Miller. In that race, we won Cuyahoga County. We lost the race in general by 55-45, which was the best performing congressional race for this district in the past decade, and one of the best ever for this district. If you take the district and take the cities and put it into what it would be if it's the current Ohio 7th. Just a little bit about me. I was born here in Northeast Ohio. Grew up in Slavic Village, but moved around quite a bit. Moved from Bedford to Solon to Chardon to Auburn, and now I live in Bay Village. Went to the University of Hawaii for my undergrad. I graduated with a political science degree. And during that degree, or during that time at University of Hawaii, I got a scholarship to study Chinese. And so that took me to China, where I didn't want to squander the opportunity of getting a $50,000 all expense paid scholarship to learn a foreign language. And so I stayed in China quite some time to make sure that I got my Chinese speaking level and reading and writing up to a proficient level. I stayed in China for about 13 years, 6 years in Beijing. Also 7 years in Shanghai, moved around from Hong Kong, Singapore, and did 2 years in Taiwan with a full scholarship for my master's degree in business. During that time, I started a small business. I sold that small business to a company in San Diego, which brought me back over here to the United States, which I traveled around about 40 different countries, got back to Ohio and said, Ohio really needs somebody that cares about Ohio, cares about the U.S., and also has seen things internationally, and that's why I got into the race for U.S. Congress back in 2022, and that's why we're here again in 2024.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for both of your statements. I think that's given our audience a flavor for the two candidates. For our first question, I remind our candidates we have 2 minutes to answer each question. The current 7th Congressional District extends from Cleveland suburbs on the west and a few in the southeast to Medina, then south to Wayne County. The Worcester area has a sliver of northern Holmes County in it. Mr. Diemer, you'll be up first. Are there issues specific to the 7th District that call for immediate congressional attention, and how would you plan to address them?
Great question. There's a lot of issues that are immediate to Ohio's 7th District in Northeast Ohio. Jobs is one of the number ones. Ohio has seen a bleeding of jobs that went abroad when it comes to our industry. So we have to make sure that we are focusing on bringing jobs back here to Ohio, stop the brain drain that is here in Ohio. And I think a good way to do that is start having a diversity of opinions. So right now we have a Congress that is down in Columbus that is very much skewed Republican, that is allowing different, younger people that are in the community to say, I don't want to stay in Ohio anymore. We have to have that change. So young people stay in Ohio, start families, start businesses, and make sure that we do not have that brain drain in Ohio. The other issues are just local as well. We codified the right to an abortion here in Ohio in November. That was a very important issue for Ohio 7, as you can see. It doesn't matter how the county has voted, if it was red or blue before, ubiquitously, we've said that in Ohio 7th, that they want to legalize abortion. And they also didn't want the tyranny of what was happening in Columbus when it was trying to destroy the Constitution. And so we couldn't have grassroots movements saying how our laws were here in the state of Ohio. And so Ohio has shown time and time again, Ohio 7th has shown time and time again that there are very many grassroots things that are on the people's mind. That is not just a Republican district, because everybody says it's a Republican leaning. It is not Republican leaning. It is definitely a district of common sense, and it wants people to advocate for those grassroots issues. Right now, we're going to be advocating for gerrymandering, anti-gerrymandering, And we have to get that on the ballot. And then in November, you're going to see Ohio 7 come out and vote. Again, like I said, with everything else, probably about 60-40 to end gerrymandering. And those are all the issues that I want to put on and take to Washington.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Same question now to Mr. Bugie.
Yeah, I'm on a twin track with this. This Ohio and Cleveland in general, the greater Cleveland area, of course, including the district, has picked more presidents than any other state and region. And the issues that I ran on then, 1992, are still really troubling us, and nobody's safe. For example, gun control. I don't mean taking guns away. I'm a Second Amendment owner and I own guns, but I think that even though it's a national issue, that no one is safe, unfortunately, that it's also becomes a local issue. It's the same thing with women's choice. It's something that affects all of us, all our families. It's very sensitive, but I just think the state should stay out of this kind of privacy for individuals. And going back to guns for a minute, I think we should stop manufacturing semi-automatics. But of course, it comes down in many ways to the dignity and the opportunity to work. And I've helped start, it sounds like an unbelievable number, but it's true, about 800 businesses around the world. It's on the record. It can be looked up. And for business and being pro-business and also pro-immigration, sat on the board of Global Cleveland for years to bring immigrants in. I helped bring a company into Cleveland that hired 2,000 people in America and 300 here, including both my nieces. So some of the things I've learned to do, some of the experiences I've had can really benefit the district, but it also, I'm running on a national basis too, because some of these problems are eating away at the fabric of our society, affecting our health, affecting our very institutions. And that affects all of us. And that's why I'm running.
Okay, thank you very much for that perspective. Now, both of you have mentioned your business experience, and we all know how important developing jobs and business is in Ohio generally. What can Congress do to address economic development and environmental conservation? Can both of these be pursued together? In particular, the rural districts have distinct environmental issues that might be of interest to them. And I believe, Mr. Bugie, you're up first.
Okay, thank you. This is where I've evolved my positions over the years. I'm 70 with built-in term limits, so I've had a chance to think these things through. And you bring up a great question here. I think we can have environmental conservation. I believe, actually, the world is almost on an inevitable course unless we really double or triple down on global warming to do that. But I'm not in a camp where it's only that and we can't have energy production. I'm not radically against us doing everything we can. It's interesting, the Biden administration has done a better job than any administration in energy development. I'm not anti having us be energy independent and building jobs through that in Ohio, where you have energy production, but also really being conscious that we're not going far enough in terms of really going after being green in a serious way and leading the world in that charge. And I can tell you that from a small business standpoint, I've helped literally hundreds of entrepreneurs believe in their own dreams and set up systems and programs and teams around the world, 40 countries, including here, 800 offices on how to start and build a business. And I can bring that expertise here. And I've also had the good fortune of being able to run 2 Fortune 500. I've been a CEO at 2 publicly traded companies, one in England and one here. So I've got kind of the large company perspective on what to do to invest here and build jobs. And also, given that small business is about 2/3 of our economy, how to motivate, how to get people to think about that, how to back programs that'll encourage people to invest here in Ohio, keep people in the state, build jobs here, and slow that trickle, that brain drain. In fact, real quick, the only thing that's really stopping our brain drain, that's keeping us just at about equilibrium, is immigration here, and I plan on talking about that tonight. It's a vital aspect of our prosperity as a state and as a country.
Thank you. Thank you. So the question is about balancing economic development and environmental conservation. with attention to the diverse ecosystems of this very large, sprawling district. So, Mr. Diemer.
We always put economic development and economic conservation as their opposite of each other. And I think that that's how we were, kind of how we were brought up. And I don't know what it is. It's that business has to destroy the environment. And I don't agree with that, especially since that we are on one of the best resources, greatest resources of fresh water in the world, the Great Lakes and Lake Erie. And we also have to really think about that and be conscious about how privileged that Ohio is to be on that lake and have the resources of the Cleveland Metro Park system. Look, Ohio's state legislator has already allowed fracking under our state parks, which is unacceptable. And so what we have to do is have a congressperson in Washington understanding the amazing resources that we do have, and fostering different bills and different allocations and incentives for businesses to start over here in Ohio's 7th District in Northeast Ohio. But at the same time, those businesses should absolutely have a commitment to making sure that our water stays clean, our air stays unpolluted, and our rivers don't catch on fire like they did 40, 50 years ago. Look, I just want to just double down and say that how fortunate we are to be living in one of the greatest places in the United States when it comes to resources in our environment. And we have to really start taking it seriously to protect that.
Okay, thank you. Now, continuing our, I guess, jobs and business focus, or a segue into something that Mr. Bugie raised, and I will be starting with Mr. Diemer for this question. The topic of immigration has been raised, and I would like to follow up on it. What can or should Congress do to fix our immigration system? Which, you know, what is your view of the value of immigration? How would you fix what people perceive as a problem with immigration? And I believe Mr. Diemer is up first.
There is definitely a problem with immigration, and I don't know if it's the way that people are thinking it. I have a good friend who is married to a Filipino woman. They have 2 kids. They live in Indiana. They've been living here in the United States for probably a decade. Her sister has just got denied for a tourist visa to come visit the family. Look, we have these policies in line for immigration, for tourist visas, for people to come over, for us to find the brightest and the most talented people to work in industries or recruit for different industries, or to just enjoy the American experience. And they are blocked at every path forward. And at the same time, we also have policies that do not incentivize people to come into the country and join this America practice. So look, we have to streamline the process. We have to make sure that we are allowing friends and family and extended family to come visit and stay and see America. And we could do that with technology. We could do that by streamlining, and we could do that with loosening those ways to come in. But at the same time, I know people are wondering about what's happening at the border. I've been to 40 different countries myself. And I have went there all with a visa and so on and so forth. The fact is, when people want to come to America, we have to give them an easy, clear path to how to get in, and not wait years or decades for green cards or work visas. But we can expedite that process. And the reason why we're not doing that is just straight bureaucracy. And so let's make it fast, easy, simple, clear, to the point of how immigration works, how people's families can come over to America and see people, and also how can you get a job here, and how can you have a path to enjoy the American experience.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Bugie. So actually this answer has raised an important, what is the immigration issue, right? What exactly is the issue? Is it, what is the issue, and what would you do to fix it?
This is an issue that is, I think, like gun violence, out of control. I think that this is an issue that is existential for America. We cannot be a nation if this continues. In fact, it's already at a crisis proportion. And I've seen how the third world lives. I worked in the third world for many years. I started with Eaton Corporation before I got into recruitment, and I worked in very, very poor places. And I know how desperate people are to get in here, and they should be. That's the greatest nation on earth. But Congress this was a problem 30 years ago when I ran, and now it's just blown out of all proportion. It's out of control. And I hate to say it because it breaks my heart, because I know how desperate most of these people are. But we've got to close the border. We've got to close it, and we've got to close it to illegal immigration, even though we have to at the same time take care somehow and work with the countries. Like El Salvador has become one of the safest countries in the world because we're working with them. It used to be one of the most dangerous. We can work with the other countries, but we can't have people flooding in here like this. And I would push every single day on getting Congress together and uniting on this issue. Trump just blew up the last bill that was the best bill that had been put forward in decades to do something about this. But we have to get into session, and we have to come up with solutions, and it has to be cross-party. It has to be across the aisle. Now, having said that, I've been involved in immigration issues and bringing people to America for decades. I was on the board of Global Cleveland with Al Ratner as chairman. And I fully support, in fact, I think hundreds of thousands of legal immigrants should be allowed to come in and encouraged to come in. What's happened is the politicization, the demonization of the people coming in has slowed down and made immigration difficult, even if it's legal. And it's hurting us as a nation. It's a very bedrock of our existence. So we're choking ourselves off for people who want to live here and can help. 2 out of 3 new jobs are created by immigrants. Half the Fortune 500 are run by immigrants. They're great, great assets. They are who we are, with the exception of Native Americans, and even they came across the Bering Sea originally, Bering Strait. So
Thank you.
That's my opinion on it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That brings me to sort of a global question here, which is, I think we can recognize that, as you mentioned, immigration has been an issue for a very long time, that different people have different views about what the issue is, and also how to fix it, and that this is a highly polarized issue. How can we work across party lines to achieve bipartisan solutions? And in particular, what does each of you believe you bring to the process to help support bipartisan solutions? Or maybe the question assumes that bipartisan solutions are the way to go. So, it's an open-ended question. We got a problem, people disagree. What would you do about it? And I think, Mr. Bugie, you're up first on that.
Thank you. Well, it's clear that both parties know it's a crisis, and so does every American. And I really believe we need to go into a special session. And I've done this so many times around the world, getting people to work with each other at high levels, to go in the room and come out with some solutions. And we're getting now to where all people agree across the board, we've got to do something. This would be my #1 priority, to work with Republicans, to work with independents, to work with everyone to solve this horrible problem, because it's horrible for the people trying to get in. It's not just hurting us all the way up through New York. It's hurting them. And we've got to operate, as Martin Luther King said, with the urgency of now. Now, I have a lot of credibility on this issue. I've started and built businesses all over the world, and a lot of them dealt with cross-border transfer of talent and labor. And I feel that I can speak with a lot of, call it, experience and credibility on this issue, where I won't be like a freshman congressman where I have to wait 7 years before my voice is heard on something. This is something where I have deep expertise and also a proven track record of bringing people together and getting solutions to tough problems. I don't want to, we can't endure this on an ongoing basis. It's eroding our country as a nation, and it's pitting us against ourselves. So we've got to solve it. Top priority for me.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me add a follow-on just for Mr. Bugie, because this is one question that has come in just for Mr. Bugie, and then I'll turn to Mr. Diemer's answer to the how would you work across party lines question. But that is, you have a fairly recent history as a Republican. So you explained in your opening statement that you have had different party affiliations, and you're now running as a Democrat centrist to be a bridge builder, which is one of the, directly relates to this question. So the particular question asked by the audience was, would you caucus with the Democrats if elected?
When you say that, you mean, would I caucus with them and be a caucus versus the Republican position?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What will your party affiliation be?
Well,
if
my
you are
party
elected?
affiliation will be, and I'm running as a Democrat, and I will be a Democrat officially when I vote March 19th. I can't be one earlier, but the reason I'm where I am today doing this at my age, putting my retirement on the line, is because I'm such a believer that our nation needs this kind of unity and support and lack of division. And when I see even things locally that I've been involved with, like when Justin Bibb ran for mayor and Tom Gilepis, the mayor of Bay Village, joined with me as I was chairman of that campaign as a Republican, yes, bringing together Democrats and independents to get him elected. And that's my mentality. So yes, of course I'll caucus with the Democrats, but I will bring the Republicans in. I mean, to the point about, the Great Lakes, and it seems unrelated, but it is. Congressman Joyce has been the best congressman in this whole region of the country on protecting the Great Lakes. And I think we should acknowledge that we can get along with people, and they do have good ideas. We have to have our own, but then we have to build those bridges to bring them in. We can't have this stuff keep falling apart. We're fiddling while Rome burns. And that's what Congress has been doing. And that's why the approval ratings are on the floor. I want to change that. I'll work every day. That's what I'm going to do. Okay.
Thank you. And I appreciate your having time for that particular follow-on question. So now turning to Mr. Diemer, the question is party-based splits. You can see what's been happening in Congress with the ability to get anything done. How would you be prepared to promote progress and agreement in Congress?
My dad is a pastor, and he did this speech, or he did this sermon the other day when I ran for my first campaign, and it was entitled "Be a Peacemaker," and I have this on my wall that says "Be a Peacemaker" ever since. My mom's a Republican, my family's Republican. My mom supports Trump, and I have a good relationship with them, and I want to make sure that I do, because they're my family and I love them, and it's okay to have friends and talk to people that are Republicans and have different political ideologies than you. Then that's what a free nation is about, and that's what we fight for in America, is to have those disagreements, to have those different ideas. And so I 100% welcome that, and nothing is more fun than hopping on the phone with my mom or a Skype call and debating about politics with a glass of wine in hand. But with that said, does being a peacemaker and being a moderate, or being somebody who meets in the middle, mean that we get to get walked all over? It doesn't mean that we have to get back to the table for abortion, or not leave that up to a woman and her doctor? Does that mean that we just say, oh, maybe the election was stolen and January 6th was not a riot? Does that mean that we have to turn our back on healthcare and people's health? Does that mean that we have to stand by and watch stock trading in Congress? And then we have to have super PACs and money just flow into these elections from corporations and rich billionaires? Does this mean that we have to kind of see the middle ground about what's happening with our environment? That I will say that there are no middle grounds for those. Yes, I can talk. Yes, I can reach across the aisle, but there's some things that we just can't bend on.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. Our next couple of questions are about particular issues in the news these days. But first, I'd like to get to a question one audience member posed that I find really interesting one, which is, please identify, each of you, a policy of President Biden that you support and a policy of President Biden that you oppose, and also the same for candidate Trump. Is there a policy of his that you support and a policy of his that you oppose, and why? This is kind of a compound question, but I thought it was interesting. So it's just identify an issue for each of these, one pro, one con, or both. And, you know, well, I think Mr. Diemer, you're up first, unfortunately. So because you had just provided us with a very nice answer on your views of bipartisanship. So, well, how would you answer this one?
I'll be specific. I think the infrastructure bill from Joe Biden was amazing. We need to invest in infrastructure. Look, I have lived abroad. I've lived in countries that honestly have brand new infrastructure. China has just built brand new cities starting in the 90s and have high-speed rail. Same thing with Japan and all over Asia, to be honest with you. We have to get better with that. We should have, 5G should be the minimum of everybody's connectivity when it comes to the cellular. We should be able to scoot across the country with high-speed rail. So even though I don't think the infrastructure bill went far enough, it was a great start to get everybody connected, to make sure that we are continuously building our infrastructure here in the U.S. So I applaud that. I do not applaud the continuation of funding and fueling wars. Look, I am anti-war, and I think that we should be doing, not a pacifist, but anti-war. We should be doing much more when it comes as a country and the leverage we have as the United States of America to sit down at the table and talk about peace and diplomacy and making sure that we are stopping wars instead of funding and fueling. And so I would really like to see much more diplomacy first and bombing later in every industry, in every administration. With my China experience, I did see that there is an unfair balance when it came to what China does and fund when it comes to industries, when it comes to how they treat other foreign countries, how they get imports into their country, and what they allow other countries to do within their markets. And so Trump, I think, position on China's tariffs and trying to make that a bigger, a more even playing field, as well as the trade deficit and acknowledging that, is very important, I think, to the United States and our industries and our jobs here in Northeast Ohio. And the Muslim ban was the one that I did not like with Trump. Do not classify people like that. That is absolutely unacceptable.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Bugie, how would you respond to that question?
I think that President Biden has had to really go through the, eye of the needle on the Ukrainian war and Israel. And in both cases, we are dancing with the possibility of a nuclear catastrophe. And he has steadily and with a lot of courage stood up for Israel, even though it's an absolute atrocity what's going on with the Palestinian rate of deaths, is particularly of children. And he's under enormous pressure. Look what's coming up in Michigan. And it's taken a lot of fortitude on his part and diplomacy to stand up for Israel, and yet to continue to look to the future to get a two-state solution established. And that's exactly what I agree with. Where I disagree with him, where I think he's been weak, is on the border. The border has mushroomed in a major catastrophe. I don't need to go over it again. And I think that he could have done more much sooner on that subject. As far as Trump, it'd be surprising to people to know, but I'm very involved with this issue with Edwin's Institute, who rehabilitates ex-prisoners coming back into society. And Trump was very strong on giving people a second chance. I think one of his children was really for it, but I was really surprised here because I know Brandon Krastowski very well, the founder there, and he told me of all the things that the Trump administration did to enable people to get a second chance, which I found surprising, but it happens to be true. So sometimes people can surprise you, even when you think they're, Darth Vader incarnate, that kind of thing. Now, where I'm against Trump is on, I've even got it in my latest video release where he says women should be punished for having an abortion. He's been all over on the issue, but he is coming down with the right wing of the Republican side, and I think it's terrible. And I think he's a coward for doing it. I think he's caved into the right wing, He's caved into the evangelicals, and he is not one. And it's one of the many reasons why I can't stay in the Republican Party. I couldn't do it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Now, a couple of your responses have touched on issues that members in the audience would like a direct statement about, which is two relatively straightforward to ask, although not to answer. First, your position on U.S. support for the war in Ukraine. And I think, Mr. Bugie, you're up first for that. So it's specifically United States policy on the war in Ukraine.
This is, we've got some major issues. This is more dangerous time by far than the Cuban Missile Crisis was in the early 60s. We are openly talking about nuclear exchange with Russia. They're talking about it. We're talking about it. And we cannot let that happen, obviously. Einstein said the next war will be fought with the atom, the one after that with sticks and stones. And he's right. We've got to get Russia, and I've worked in Russia a lot. I know a lot of Russian people, leaders and regular people. And Russian mothers have children too. I am not pro-Putin. I am not pro-dictatorship. But again, if we don't get in the room with these people and nail this and solve it, we're sliding inexorably towards war. And we cannot let that happen. And again, I'm not going to wait my turn. Congress to me is a bully pulpit. I'm not going to sit there in the back benches and wait to talk about this. We have to solve it. But meanwhile, we can't just capitulate and let the guy roll in. But on the other hand, he's running out of options. The less he's got, the more they're going to resort to something big like using theater and then maybe even civilian targeted nuclear weapons. We can't just stand by and watch this happening. We've got to get into the room with these people and talk to them, not capitulate, not roll over. We're still the strongest military in the world, but we have to act. We can't just keep dithering and hopefully something good will happen. So I support the Ukrainians, yes, but we've got to put huge pressure on ourselves and the Russians to get into a room and stop this insanity.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Diemer, your views on United States support for the war in Ukraine.
I agree with Doug, to be honest with you. It's about diplomacy and peace. We should be in the room. We should be discussing this all the time. We need to support Ukraine. I think that a lot of people, in hindsight of World War II, looks back at Germany, Nazi Germany, and go, if we only nip that in the bud, and this could be one of those situations. But at the same time, we need to. We have that. This is that situation is to sit in the room and have diplomacy and peace, and make. But at the same time, support Ukrainians.
Okay, thank you. A related question that I think follows in on that is the other major conflict happening and controlling, getting a lot of attention now, is the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. And one of our audience members puts this question in these terms. If someone attacked the U.S., as happened in Israel, actually, this has happened, it was 9/11, but would the U.S. want other countries to tell us how to manage our response? And I think what the questioner is asking is the United States policy in the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. What is the United States role in this particular conflict? Mr. Diemer.
Yeah, we did have it. 9/11 did happen, and then the current president at the time went into Iraq, and we had around a million casualties from that war. I think that Americans are looking at this and going, hindsight, going, we shouldn't have. That should not have happened. And I think that we feel a little embarrassed about what happened over in Iraq, about how we destabilized the region as well as Afghanistan and the $2 trillion that was spent over there. But I want to point out that Cuyahoga County has, and Northeast Ohio has around 100,000 Muslim Arabs, as well as about 100,000 Jews. And the goal of, I think, the congressman for Ohio's 7th district is to make sure that we are making those sides not feel alienated within the place where they live, which is Ohio's 7th district and Ohio. I have a podcast with the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party where we brought two representatives from the Israeli Jewish representation, as well as the Arab Muslim representation, and had a discussion about how people feel. And you know what they both said that was ubiquitous about across both of what they were saying to each other was that we want to make sure that our lives here in America is good, and we want to make sure that we're talking to each other, and we have family there, and the emotions and the feelings that we have. And so I think that the number one goal that Ohio's 7th congressman is to understand the diverse population we have, bring people to the table, and make sure that we're creating peace here within Ohio, number one.
Thank you. Mr. Bugie, what is the United States' role in the conflict going on now between Israel and Palestinians?
Well, I think our government and President Biden are playing a very constructive role under very, very difficult circumstances. I've been to Israel a number of times. It'd be like if you were downtown Cleveland, you could get to the other end of Lakewood before you hit Rocky River, and that's how close Israel is to many of its enemies. And the attack merited a strong response. To them, it's an existential situation, but there's something called proportionality. Even though they're mad with rage over what happened, and they should be, we have to do what we're doing. We have to push people to the peace table, and we have to get a two-state solution, or you're going to have more generations of hate. These kids in Palestine don't know anything else. And even Jimmy Carter, who, of course, authored the Camp David Accords, said that Palestine is like apartheid. I have many, many Jewish friends. One helped bring 25,000 Jews to Israel from Eastern Europe. I am totally in favor. I'm as pro-Israeli and pro. I think I could probably give Max Miller a run for his money. But I also know that bombing people in a contained area where all these kids are dying and they have no defense, we have to do the same thing we'd have to do in the Ukraine and Russia and with ourselves. We are half their foreign aid. They need us. We need them in the Middle East. But we have to do what Biden is doing with Netanyahu, and that's pressure the guy to find a way of settling and moving this thing forward. I mean, Clinton and Blair managed to do it in Northern Ireland. That was decades of hate and conflict, and they brought it to an end. And that's what we have to do in Israel. And we need to do it in months, not years. We have to get this thing into the room and come out with some decisions.
Okay, thank you. Now, sort of a different tack kind of question. This is a Democratic primary. Democratic primary voters are focused on success in November. So to each of our candidates, what makes you the candidate most likely to be victorious in November over the incumbent Republican? And I think, Mr. Bugie, you're up first on that. You mentioned his name, so I think
Okay.
welcome hearing what you have to say.
As a quick aside, I was so pleased to see, and we shouldn't demonize the opposition either within our own party, of course, or the other side. And I know how the Democrats and the Republicans think. I've worked with their leadership. Does it make me a waffler? I think I'm strong to stand up like I am. But I absolutely think that it's time for the center to rise. Whoever wins this primary is going to get most of the Democratic votes. There's no question about it. But it's the moderate Republicans who aren't going to vote for Trump. It's women across the board who he's lost forever. That ship has sailed. And the independents, who are 70% of the voters, are not all going to go flowing to Dennis Kucinich because he's a progressive, sort of left of center. I think he's a great guy. I walk door to door with him. but he's not going to capture that vote. I think only really someone with my profile and my platform, bugiecentral.com, I'll put a plug in, can actually win the election with Democrats, but yes, with people who are completely disenchanted and want to see an end to Trump and all he stands for and all he's doing. And I think I'm the guy to do that from the different aspects of, the electorate. That's why I think I can win. That's why I'm running.
Thank you for that. Mr. Diemer, same question to you. Looking towards November, what gives you the edge in the 7th district for this election?
We've already overperformed. When everybody thought that we couldn't pull the numbers that we did, we won Cuyahoga County. When we were outspent 10 to 1, we had Max Miller wondering if he actually is going to get the election at 9:30 at night on the Tuesday, looking at the polls come in because we were up by tens of thousands of votes. Representative Robinson told me in a conversation, he said that everybody who has went before him, and he flipped Solon from red to blue, everybody who went before him laid a brick to the path of Democratic victory. We laid multiple bricks last time. We have coalitions across not only Cuyahoga County, but Medina and Wayne. I've been down there multiple times already to every nook and cranny of all the counties, and I'll be in Holmes County in March. And I just got back from Medina today. The fact is we have the system set up. We have the grassroots. We have the people ready to work, and we already overperformed. Right now, we just have to get to work a little bit harder. And I am assure you that in this 2024, when we see how Cuyahoga County and Medina voted for issue 1, when we saw that the whole Ohio 7th district already stood up and said, you're not going to take our democracy away, that they will come out for the better candidate. And we will show that we are the better candidate because we are ready to knock doors. We're ready to do all the work that we did before to get issue 1 on the ballot, pass it, and as well as preserve our constitutional democracy here in Ohio. So we already got the grassroots, we already got the infrastructure, and we're ready to, well, beat Max in 2024.
Okay, thank you for those. One last substantive question before do we have time for one last? I think we do. Before we, just briefly, before we turn to closing statements, is there one other issue that we haven't discussed that you want voters to know about from your campaign? Just in brief, one other issue, and then after that we'll turn to closing statements. So Mr. Diemer, one other issue that we haven't talked about that you think people should be aware of?
I mean, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, literally. And that is Doug as a registered Republican, voting Republican for the past over a decade, given to only Republican candidates in the state house and the federal house, praising Bernie Moreno, who's running against Sherrod Brown, who happens to be Max Miller's father-in-law online, not living in the district, as well as on the executive committee for the Republican Party here in Cuyahoga County. Now, if all of that is not discussed, and that's not an issue that we should be bringing up in a Democratic primary, then I don't know what is. Look, we asked the question if Doug is going to caucus with Democrats. He's not even a Democrat yet. When I was out there getting signatures in snowstorms with people that are on the call right now, we were in thunderstorms getting signatures for issue 1 to get on the ballot. When I was moving every single sign from issue 1 in August and issue 1 in November out of the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party headquarters and dropping them off to different places. When we were out standing at polling locations with signs, when we were campaigning for different Democratic candidates and giving them money or showing up to their fundraisers, I didn't see Doug anywhere. And so all of these issues are happening here in Ohio that we are fighting for. If it's not our democracy, if it's not people's rights, I did not see him one time. And yet for some reason, he's running as a Democrat and he's asking for the Democrat vote. That is definitely something that we need to discuss. Something that we need to flush out a little bit better than, hey, Doug is a moderate now, and I'm all of a sudden deciding to be a Democrat. No, he didn't put in the work. There's no record of him putting in the work or being a Democrat, and this is a Democratic primary. That has to be flushed out.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bugie, is there a question that we haven't talked about yet that you would like to raise before we move on to closing statements?
Yes, I think and everything I feel and see as I've crossed the world in our country many times, that youth, let's call it under 30s, have lost their faith in the future. And it's not just some kind of a campaign slogan or something I'm just throwing out there. I'd like to leave with a safer country and a better country, and the issues I've already raised, and a more unified country, but also to use the government in a very smart, targeted way to expand the Peace Corps and the AmeriCorps, and have gap year students on a gap year out of high school before they go to school or college or technical school, spend a year helping the country, and back that with real organization and focus. So, for example, something that breaks my heart, I think it's a travesty as a nation, there shouldn't be even one homeless veteran on the street, not one. And I think that we can energize people to do these kind of things. I think we can energize people to do the right thing for society and observe red flag laws and turn people in, even if it's their own family, if they're seeing some really strange stuff happening with storage of ammunition and weapons. But we've got to be motivated positively to do that. Like JFK said, ask not what you can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Now, I was a Democrat 20 years and ran as a congressperson. And I did leave, but as soon as Trump insulted and John McCain for being a loser, when the guy spent 4 more years in prison than he had to, and when January 6th happened, you can go to my website and see I'm doing videos and really sticking my neck out on this, that he watched that scaffold being built, and he never called Pence to see how he was doing after that event. We are, Matt, you refer to it, we are possibly Germany in 1932, and we don't even know what's coming. We're like the boiling frog that doesn't know it's dead, but then it's just dead. And that's what I'm running for. And believe me, I took a lot of you-know-what when I backed Bibb. And I am used to taking the heat, standing up for what's right. So I'm doing this to stand up for the country and what's right. And I'm not going to get sucked into, I did this, or I gave 500 or $1,000 to this or that person along the way. These issues are
thank you for that. Thank you for that. I didn't mean to cut you off. The 2 minutes.
That's okay.
2 minutes. So we are now moving on. Thank you, both candidates, for your answers to the audience questions. And thank you to the audience for asking some excellent questions. It's now time for our candidates to offer their closing statements. Mr. Diemer is up first with his closing statement, followed by Mr. Bugie.
Well, thank you very much for putting this on. This was, like I said, League of Women Voters always does a great organized event, so appreciate it. I want everybody to know that I've been here for the past 4 years, working in the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, out on the streets, showing up to events, showing up to get the work done when it's needed. If it's door knocking, signature getting, phone calls, dropping off signs, standing at polling locations, or just maybe trying to think outside the box and advocating for democratic ideas, I've been here. In our last campaign, we overperformed. We were outspent 10-1 and still overperformed. And I don't want to say that that's all me. That is the coalitions that we made. That is the Democratic club presidents across the county and counties of Ohio's 7th district, to working with the different county parties as well, to the grassroots, and just being there and knowing that you're going to get a response if you come to me. And this is why people are still coming out and supporting my campaign when we're running again. And so we've laid those bricks. As I said, I talked to Representative Robinson, and he said that everybody who's come before him laid the bricks to a path to a Democratic win. And we laid those bricks, and people who came before me also laid those bricks. And I'm very happy to be standing here and walking across those bricks, and we're going to win in 2024. And we're going to do that by the coalitions that we build, by the passion that we've seen, by the ways that Ohio has been changing. And we see that Ohio is putting people and policy over politics. And we saw that in August, we saw that in November, and we're going to see that in 2024 in November. And so you can find me at diemerforcongress.com. You can email me at matthew@diemerforcongress.com, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. And you will see me all around town and in many different events. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And now, Mr. Bugie, you have an opportunity for a closing statement.
Thank you. let me, borrow from Lincoln's second inaugural with malice towards none and charity to all. And Matt Diemer has done the trench work. He has. And I have too in my own way, with the Cleveland Police Foundation, with Global Cleveland, with Near West Theater, with Values in Action to reduce bullying in schools, with Our Lady of the Wayside to help mentally challenged people get houses and stuff. I mean, I've been very actively involved in other ways, but it's a passion with me. I've been doing it all my life, and people know it. But we're in a cold civil war here. I'm not taking anything away from the hard work that's been put in. But we're in a state where if we don't stand up to this guy and beat Miller, and we can't do it alone as a Democratic Party. Unfortunately, Trump's not going to roll over. He won Ohio by 8 points last time, and Miller won by 10. That's not going to be an easy deficit to overcome. I simply don't think we can do it without moderate Republicans who are going to come to me like that. I'm going to be their choice. And all independents are not. A lot of them are centrists and moderates. So I don't take anything away from any effort that Mr. Diemer has made. I'm just saying I'm the right guy for this time in history to win, to beat Max Miller and Donald Trump, and to fight against Bernie Moreno. I said some nice things about him. I don't agree with him just because he's done well as an immigrant. He has. But the point is that we got to go beyond this. And like Johnson was a Southerner, but he got the Civil Rights Act passed. Like Reagan was so anti-communist, but he worked with Gorbachev to tear down that wall. That's the kind of guy I am. I can do these things. I'm not being an egotist about it. That's how I've lived. So I would just ask people to think beyond party, but think in party, but beyond it too. And think about that when you go to the voting booth on March 19th. BugieCentral.com. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you've done tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. This concludes our candidates forum for the 2024 Democratic primary election for this congressional district. I'd like to thank the candidates very much for your time. Thank all of our volunteers who made this event possible. The League of Women Voters Greater Cleveland is an all-volunteer organization. I would like to thank the audience for attending. It's the involvement of educated voters that makes democracy work. Don't forget the League of Women Voters online voter guide, vote411.org, has information about candidates and information about elections generally. I'd like to thank these candidates for both responding to the League of Women Voters Vote 411 questionnaire. That's what enables us to put candidate information on vote411.org, where it's because the candidates actually answer our questions. A recording of this event will be posted on our League of Women Voters Greater Cleveland YouTube channel, which you can find at our website, lwvgreatercleveland.org. If you support the work of the League of Women Voters, please consider becoming a member. Information is on our website, lwvgreatercleveland.org. And I would like to thank our candidates and volunteers again, and I wish you all a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.